I know eating healthy during the holidays is difficult, but we really want to focus on some simple cooking and tips to help overcome obesity. I myself am a lousy cook. I don't have a lot of time as a student, but I have figured out a couple of ways to stay healthy while eating foods that are still nutritious and can get compliments from guests sometimes. Next slide, please. So we want to start off by introducing obesity. Obesity is a killing disease. Having a poor sedentary lifestyle with no exercise and a bad diet leads to obesity and metabolic stress as your body is unable to break down the excessive carbs and sugars. This results in hypertensive remodeling of your heart, leading to ventricular and vascular stiffening. All of these factors combined with age lead to a global loss of cardiac, vascular, and peripheral reserve, which can lead to heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. In general, we want you to take away that obesity has a negative effect on multiple parts of your body, ranging from a chest wall restriction of your lungs, leading to pulmonary hypertension and impaired ventilation, a worsened cardiac function, a fatty liver state, which leads to inflammation. And as we know, inflammation in the body is the root cause of many diseases such as atherosclerosis, and the visceral adiposity leads to inflammatory markers as well. Your kidney experiences direct toxic effects and glomerular dysfunction, and the skeletal muscles have impaired perfusion and decreased oxygenation. So overall, we really want to avoid obesity. There's negative effects on many parts of your body, so just keep that in mind. Next
Steph,
slide.
keep that slide. Go back one more slide again. So, I love this slide because this is the reality, and this is quite sad right now. So, what's happened in North America, we are, as a population, overweight. And overweight is a very much causes inflammation. Affects inflammation coming from the belly that we know affects the heart, leads to congestive heart failure, short of breath. It leads to lung problems. You can't breathe because your lungs are restricted, but also damages the lungs. It's now the leading cause of liver cirrhosis. And it's also a major contributing factor to your kidneys aging too quickly. And your muscles get this sarcopenia, is that they get deconditioned. So to me, this is a terrible whammy, and COVID's unmasked this with a vengeance. So just having, the best body mass index is between 20 to 25, and people gain weight during COVID. Well, I lost weight during COVID. So if I can do it, you can do it too. So this is really a plea to everybody, is that we need to retake control of our lives, and we need to get control of our weight. Now, for many of us, not gaining new weight is important. For many of us, getting the weight down. And if you want to work at it, it took me 61 plus years to get to the best weight I can be right now. Will I stay at this weight? I don't know, but I'm going to fight hard to maintain that weight. After this session, I'm going to head off to the Shadok Stairs if anybody wants to come join me. This weekend, I'm going to go shopping with Chad. We're going to buy some healthy stuff. I plan to go for a couple bike rides this weekend, and I'm going to work harder than most people. I have lots to do, and I've given up sleep, but I'm replaced sleep with activity, and my wellness is getting stronger. So I have my bad moments and good moments, but this picture here, take a picture of this, everybody. Take a look at this. This is the consequence of being overweight. And people come to me and say, I've been fine for 50 years. Why am I short of breath? Why am I tired? Why am I fatigued? We haven't talked about the cancer risk. This is the reason why. Your weight affects all your major organ systems in your body. They're wearing out quicker than we have to be. So we have to take control, and we will take control. And right now with the festive season, we're going to be happy, healthier, and Stephanie and her team is going to show us some good ways of doing it. Thanks so much for showing it, Stephanie.
And thank you for sending me that image. So now we're going to get into the Christmas tips for eating healthy on the holidays. Next slide, please. So you may think, Dr. Carnew, he's ruining my holidays. I want my food. I waited all year for this. Well, we really hope that the last slide and the rest of the presentation will persuade you to really emphasize eating healthy at this time, because this is when we're most at risk. Next slide, please. Holidays are notorious for a spike in excess deaths and ER visits, especially during Christmas and New Year's, which includes cardiovascular, respiratory, nutritional, digestive, and cancer-related issues. You have a greater chance of dying on Christmas, the day after Christmas, or on New Year's than any other day. And this is a statistics that was found in a study that was conducted. And the reason for this ranges from sadness to stress regarding the holidays and relatives, bad eating habits because of all those parties you're going to be attending or virtual parties this year, and drinking. Next slide, please. So yeah, it is really important to stay healthy during the holidays. And no, we are not ruining your Christmas time, don't worry.
So I'll start off by introducing the science behind fried foods. And fried foods have consistently been found to correlate with an increased risk of serious health problems like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And this is due to factors like obesity, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol that can be caused by the consistent consumption of fried foods. And a study published in the BMJ examined the diet of 106,966 women for over 20 years, and they found that those who consumed one or more servings of fried chicken daily were 12% more likely to die from heart-related causes than women who didn't eat any fried foods. And even after adjusting for factors like lifestyle, overall diet, education, and income level, these results were seen. So why might this link between fried foods and heart disease exist? Frying foods significantly increase the fat content of foods. In particular, it increases the amount of unhealthy trans fats, and foods lose water and absorb a significant amount of oil during the frying process, making more calorically dense than before. So this means that there will be more calories in the same volume of food, and you can easily overconsume your daily allowance of calories. And also the frying process deteriorates oils through the chemical processes of hydrogenation and oxidation. And this causes a change in the composition of the oils where unsaturated fats turn into trans fats. And trans fats have consistently been proven to increase LDL levels and decrease HDL levels, leading to a significantly increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And each frying process causes oil to break down even more, so it's especially unhealthy to consume fried foods from restaurants since they tend to reuse their oils.
So I love the slide. So just go backtrack over here. So one of the things is that who doesn't love French fries? I love them, but I'm replacing the French fry with a baked potato. So we go from 470 calories to about 300 calories. That's a baked potato. And I make sure you eat the skin, and make sure what you put on there is maybe some little bit of vegetables or whatever. So be careful. So that, to me, that's not such a bad choice.
Knowing this, what might be some healthier alternative to frying as a cooking method? Baking is a great way to get similar textures as fried foods without consuming large amounts of oils and trans fats. Breading foods and baking them in the oven at higher temperatures, such as 400 degrees Fahrenheit, is a great substitute to frying. So here's a baked fried chicken recipe. So the point of this recipe is to mimic your typical KFC chicken, but in a much healthier way. And a big theme in this presentation is that you can make your favorite foods at home and make them much healthier. So we can definitely link this afterwards, or you guys can take a read or screenshot or whatever you want. But pretty much it's really simple to make this recipe. All you have to do is get your breadcrumbs and add some spices. We recommend adding spices instead of salts to add flavor. And then you get some egg whites to dip the chicken in. And then once you get it sticky, you coat it with breadcrumbs, and then you bake that in the oven until it's golden brown. And it really depends on your oven, but it's about 50 minutes. So yeah, next slide, please.
And if you want to get even closer to the texture of fried foods, an air fryer would yield better results. So air fryers are pretty much like mini ovens that circulate hot air around the food to fry it with little or no oil. So here we've provided an air-fried fish recipe that you can try. All of these healthier cooking methods are quite popular like within the health conscious community, and there are tons of recipes that you can easily find online. This one is just some breaded spiced fish that you place in the air fryer, but with air fryers you can pretty much use any typical recipe that you would fry and it transfers over really well.
How healthy is your turkey? Turkey is considered to be leaner than other meats, and it's always talked about as the healthier option compared to pork or beef, but it's still important to pay attention to your method of preparation. So this goes for whether you bake it or you deep fry it, and if you keep skin on or skin off, and the portion of the turkey that you're eating. In general, there's not too much of a difference between the amount of calories, but we always recommend to go for skinless, and the breast is the healthiest part of the turkey. As you can see, I have a caloric breakdown of the different types of preparation that you could do. And in both cases, if you have the breast or the turkey leg, the skinless has less calories. And also having the breast over the turkey leg reduces the calories. And in general, when you're eating like meats or anything like that, it's always good to go with the least amount of calories because it's really hard for people to just take that small portion. I know I'm guilty of going for seconds, and a lot of you might as well. So it really adds up as you take those portions, the method of preparation. So turkey is considered a lean protein, and regardless of the cut, it has about 20 grams per serving for a relatively small amount of fat. And turkey meat also contains potassium, selenium, a spectrum of B vitamins, and most notably niacin, which is vitamin B3. And niacin contributes to healthy metabolism and helps your body process sugars and fatty acids into energy. So load up your plate on turkey, but make sure that you get the healthiest portion of it.
So now let's talk a little bit about shortbread. Shortbread cookies are a ton of people's favorite Christmas treat, mine included. However, they are surprisingly calorically dense. Each cookie can contain between 50 and 130 calories depending on the recipe. And while that might not seem too bad at first, after a few cookies it does really start to add up and can calorically equal the size of an entire breakfast. So, why are shortbread cookies so high in calories? Well, they contain large amounts of butter and sugar, and they're high in carbs because of the flour and sugar used. But instead of completely cutting out these cookies from your holiday cooking, we've come up with some tips for how you can make shortbread cookies a little bit healthier. So firstly, try substituting the large amounts of butter in the cookies with a non-dairy alternative like coconut oil. Coconut oil has about the same amount of calories as butter, but it's been shown to boost the good HDL cholesterol, so that's a bonus. If you'd like to lower the amount of carbs on your cookies, or if you're on a keto diet, you can try swapping out the all-purpose flour for almond flour. Switching out your white sugar for a lower calorie alternative like coconut sugar can help lower those calories as well. And if you weren't very keen earlier when I mentioned the idea of switching butter for a non-dairy alternative, a tip for using the butter is to use unsalted butter. Cookie recipes will often call for added salt already, so using unsalted butter will eliminate those extra unneeded cholesterol from your diet. And lastly, some people really like to dip their cookies in chocolate before serving them. So if you do this, try using dark chocolate rather than milk chocolate to lower the amount of sugar that you're consuming.
So for chicken, the difference between white and dark meat has to do with the type of muscle the meat contains. And the more myoglobin, which is oxygen binding and transporting protein that's found in muscle tissue, the darker the color of the meat. And since chickens run and walk, their legs and thigh muscles work harder and need more oxygen. That means they have more myoglobin. So for white meat, you can find it in the breast and wings. And white meat contains about 10% red fibers, and this part of the chicken is lean and mild in flavor. Dark meat chicken contains around 50% red fibers and is found in chicken legs, which are more flavorful and juicy and can be cooked for longer periods of time. And light meat contains slightly fewer calories than dark meat, and that's because dark meat has a higher fat content, almost 3 extra grams of fat per 100 grams of meat, according to the USDA nutrient database, and almost more than twice the amount of saturated fat. So white meat has a little more protein than dark meat, and while dark meat contains higher levels of zinc, iron, and vitamin C, white meat has more B vitamins. And an easy way to remember the flavor differences between light and dark meat, dark chicken meat, is that light meat tastes light, it's milder in flavor, whereas dark meat is fattier and tastes more chicken-like. So to have a combination of both types of meat on your plate during whenever you want to have chicken, that's also very important.
So another member of our cooking club couldn't join us today, but I'm going to be presenting on her behalf. So Jeslyn loves making desserts. Desserts are an important part of the holiday season, but they can sometimes be packed full of sugar and calories, and making them is quite damaging for your health. And it's very common to make lots of desserts during Christmas time. There are some small adjustments you could make to any dessert recipe that would make it a bit healthier. Jeslyn is an avid baker herself and has tried many healthier substitutes to unhealthy ingredients in her recipes, and they've all turned out quite well, as she notes. Firstly, butter and oil are very common ingredients that are used as a leavening agent in cookies, cakes, and bread. These ingredients help incorporate air into desserts so they don't end up flat and dense. Instead of butter, you could use nut butters such as peanut butter, almond butter, pistachio butter, Greek yogurt, avocados, applesauce, bananas, and even pumpkin puree, which adds a nice flavor to your dessert. If you use fruits to replace butter, be sure to cut down on the sugar in the recipe as well. It's usually recommended that you replace butter with an equal amount of these substitutes, so there are no mathematical conversions required. It may seem intimidating to use these ingredients in place of butter, but it would be great to start off with replacing about 50% of the ingredients to start off.
So in continuation from the last slide, this is what Jeslyn has to say about substituting whole wheat flour, almond flour, and oat flour for all-purpose flour. Almond and oat flour are both gluten-free, and oat flour is actually really easy to make at home as well, as you can just throw some rolled oats into a blender or food processor and pulse until you achieve a powder-like consistency similar to that of all-purpose flour.
And some more recommendations. Instead of sugar, she recommends to use stevia or erythritol, which is a naturally occurring sweetener that are very low in calories and can be found in most supermarkets nowadays. These sweeteners also have been found to not cause an increase in blood sugar levels and is thus a safer alternative for people with type 2 diabetes. Additionally, stevia is hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, so you don't need to use a lot to make your dessert. That makes the calories very low and almost zero. If you're wary of using sweeteners, a slightly healthier option is honey or maple syrup because they're natural. Although they're not the healthiest, they're quite calorically dense and they don't contain a lot of nutrients either, but they're slightly better than processed white sugar. Beyond that, try to use less sugar in the desserts than the recipes ask for, as cutting it out won't really make a noticeable difference. And you could also substitute milk with plant-based milks like coconut, almond, soy, cashew, or oat milk, which is quite flavorful.
So Jesslyn provided us with an example of the suggestions made on the previous slides, and here's a recipe for a chocolate cake that's sugar-free, gluten-free, and dairy-free. So it's understandable to not have a lot of these things on hand. So you can even make your own adjustments to this recipe, and you don't need the cake to be dairy-free. If you don't need the cake to be dairy-free, you could substitute coconut cream with unsweetened yogurt, for example, or you could exchange the almond flour with oat flour or whole wheat flour. So just switching out one ingredient in your favorite dessert recipe without a substitute mentioned in the last slide would make your dessert a bit healthier and you won't even notice like a difference.
So potatoes are a staple in holiday and Christmas meals, but we just wanted to highlight kind of different alternatives between your regular Yukon gold potato or versus a sweet potato. So in the table below, I've just included some basic nutritional value, and just on first glance, they seem to be fairly similar, and there seems to be not one that's better or worse than the other. But one thing we do want to look at is this idea of glycemic index, as different types of potatoes can differ in their glycemic index. And glycemic index is basically just a measure of how a certain food can affect your blood sugar. So foods with a glycemic index of 70 or higher usually cause a more rapid increase in blood sugar compared with foods with a medium GI, which hovers around 56 to 70, or even a lower GI, which includes foods that have a GI of 55 or less. So actually, depending on the type and cooking process, sweet potatoes have a GI that range from around 44 to 94, which seems quite large. But in general, baked sweet potatoes tend to have a much higher GI than boiled ones because of how the starch is like gelatinized and sweetened during cooking. So when looking at the GI of regular potatoes, they also vary. So for example, boiled red potatoes have a GI of 89, while baked russet potatoes have a GI of 111. One thing interesting to note is that a baked russet potato has an average GI of 85, and if you eat the skin, it will actually fall lower, which is why you see the difference between a GI of 85 with the skin on versus a GI of 111 with the skin off. Now, who should this be important for? So people who have diabetes or other blood sugar related issues may actually benefit from limiting high GI foods, and therefore it's often recommended to choose sweet potatoes over white potatoes, as a sweet variety generally has a lower GI. However, that's not to say that the cooking method and the way that the potatoes are prepared does not matter at all. We know that during the holidays, namely for dishes like mashed potato, potato casserole, while they are nutritious, they're often prepared in unhealthy ways. So if you take a look on the photo on the right, you can see that while this person has prepared a sweet potato, they've added a stick of butter, some brown sugar, some cinnamon, even some extra raisins for that extra taste. And while they may be very delicious, that may not be the best for your body. So it's important to consider both the glycemic index as well as how you are preparing the food. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we just kind of wanted to go over the different ways of cooking and what kind of impacts they have on the nutritional value of potatoes. So the three ways we're going to be talking about is microwaved versus boiled versus baked sweet potatoes, and which one is the best. So microwaving vegetables may actually help retain more than around 90% of their vitamin C content. And researchers from the University of Sydney, Australia, found that more nutrients in food are retained with faster cooking methods. So that in contrast, so cooking with methods that take longer, such as like roasting in the oven, can actually cause food to lose up to 10% more nutrients than shorter cooking times. Keeping foods hot for 2 hours can actually cause them to lose more than 10% of their remaining vitamin C and vitamin B6 content. So despite what you may read on the internet, microwaving food doesn't really kill nutrients. In fact, it can actually make certain nutrients more available during digestion. So boiling actually leaches most of the nutrients out of your food. So you should try to avoid boiling your vegetables in certain scenarios unless you're able to retain that water and just ingest it in the form of like a soup per se. So the peel of a sweet potato actually has nearly 10 times the antioxidant power as the actual flesh itself. However, when you do bake a potato, the peel's nutrition really takes a hit, and it's found to have wiped out over 2/3 of the antioxidants when baked, whereas microwaving or boiling it are comparatively much gentler processes. Another thing to consider is the vitamin A content found in sweet potatoes. So in several studies looking at the bioavailability of vitamin A from sweet potatoes, boiling was actually found to be an effective cooking method. So consumption of both boiled and mashed sweet potatoes have been shown to raise blood levels of vitamin A in children. This, when compared to baking, was actually significant, as baking can cause a drop of 80% in vitamin A levels, which is twice as much the drop found in boiling. And this, the bottom point is kind of something I reiterated in the previous slide. So the longer a sweet potato is exposed to heat, the more its glycemic index can actually increase. And researchers have concluded that the longer the cooking time at high temperatures results in the highest sugar formation. So, a little bit into the science. So, baking employs dry heat, which in turn can dehydrate the sweet potato. And in terms of the skin, it can degrade its starches, concentrated sugars, and therefore increase the sugar content and glycemic index. And conversely, the microwave actually exposed the food to heat for the shortest amount of time and increased the sweet potato's GI the least. So these are just some ways and methods to consider when preparing your sweet potatoes for the holiday.
Alan, that was very nice. So, if I got this right, is that once you heat up your food, eat it. Don't keep reheating it because every time you heat it up again, you lose some nutritional value. Uh,
Right.
if you're going to have potatoes or sweet potatoes, make sure you have the skin. In fact, the best part of it, the healthiest part, is the skin, I guess. And so, one of the things I once heard from people that by microwaving, it's an intense heat. So, does intense heat destroy or cause any damage to anything at all, or is it just sounds like it just preserves the vitamin content? Are there any downsides to microwaving?
Some people may be worried about like the radiation, but I'm sure that nowadays the technology has advanced to the point where like the radiation scares from like way before probably don't apply to the newer technologies. Um, but when I was kind of doing the research, kind of the main consensus was that the longer it is exposed to heat, the more nutrients it does lose. So if that's the case, I would, like you said, avoid kind of reheating as much as possible, just exposing it to heat. Maybe just like a one-time cooking process is enough.
So for vegetables, eat as many as you can raw, and if you cook them for very short periods of time. Steaming in the so if you're going to put a little bit of water in the microwave, very little, and just take the leftover water, put in your soup or in your coffee.
So now we're going to have a cooking demonstration by Aditi. I believe she's here. So feel free to chime in if you want to further explain anything. So yeah.
Hello, everyone. I think you can just play the video, and if the volume doesn't come through, then I'll chime in. But everything should be explained in the videos. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditi. I'm a volunteer at Dr. Green's clinic, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make pumpkin quinoa in an instant pot to give it a little bit of a holiday feel. I'm a plant-based eater, so this entire recipe is going to be vegetarian, but feel free to make any substitutions for any of the ingredients today and make any modifications to the recipe to make it work for you. Hi everyone, my name is Aditi. I'm a volunteer at Dr. Green's. Okay, so this is just a list of ingredients that I used. So I tried to keep it on the healthy side and use, ingredients that don't have like a lot of fat or a lot of calories in them. For some of these ingredients, there are healthier modifications. So for example, with pumpkin puree, if you're buying just straight up canned pumpkin puree with nothing else added in to it, that's pretty good. But like another way to make it a more like interesting and flavorful experience is to roast the pumpkin yourself and puree it yourself and make the puree all homemade. There are like options for substitutions within this recipe, so using like fresh peas instead of frozen peas, or using fresh herbs instead of dried herbs, or using broth instead of water. Just one big recommendation is if you're thinking about the liquid that you're adding into any like grains you're cooking, try to choose a low sodium option. So with pre-made like vegetable broths or chicken stock, they tend to have a lot of sodium added into them. So if you're going for that sort of broth alternative, try to make it at home. And a way to do that is just to use veggie scraps and boil that in water along with some herbs, and that adds a lot of flavor as well. So for today, I will be using 1 cup of quinoa. So for the quinoa, you don't have to rinse it. Most box quinoas are pre-rinsed. However, they do have a compound on the outside called saponin, which can make it a little bitter and soapy tasting. So if that's something that's unappealing for you, feel free to rinse your quinoa before you use it. In this bowl over here, I have 2 stalks of celery, 3 green onions, and about 4 to 5 cloves of garlic, finely chopped. We'll also be using some olive oil, oregano leaves, salt, lemon juice, and then just some additional spices. So I'm going to be using pepper, red pepper flakes, and dried basil. I'm also going to be adding some frozen peas. And for the liquid mixture, I'm using 1 cup of pumpkin puree and 1 cup of water mixed together. Just a helpful tip about the quinoa, if you're not using white quinoa and you're using a tri-colored or dark colored quinoa, it does pressure cook for longer. So if you're using that in your recipe, instead of doing 1 minute on high pressure, do about 2 to 3 minutes. Usually it's included with the instructions in the package. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is put your Instant Pot in the saute mode. And it shouldn't take longer than 20 minutes to saute, so I'm just going to set it for that. And then we want to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil into the pot. So I've added the green onions, the garlic, and the celery in, and you want to saute it for about 2 to 3 minutes until everything is starting to get soft. So it's been about 2 to 3 minutes, and now I've added in about 3/4 of a cup of baby green peas, and we're gonna just mix this all together for about 1 minute. Okay, so it's been a minute. I've added in the quinoa, and now I'm going to add in the spice mixture, which is 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 2 teaspoons of basil, and 1/2 teaspoon of some oregano. I have mixed the spices in, and now I'm going to add 2 cups of liquid. Again, this is 1 cup of pumpkin puree. I used canned, but you can roast your pumpkin and puree it yourself if you would like. Just make sure if you're using canned that it doesn't contain any added sugar. And there's also 1 cup of water. You can use 1 cup of broth, however, it does have more sodium, so just be mindful of that if your diet requires low sodium. Once you've poured the liquid in, make sure you cancel the saute mode. So looking at this, it looks like it could use a little bit more liquid. So I'm going to add 1/2 cup more of water. So once the water is added, it's now time to pressure cook it. I did add a little bit of lemon juice in as well, just as personal preference, and you can choose to include that or omit that if you would like. So to get the process started, first close the pressure cooker. Make sure the knob is towards seal and not venting, so it should typically be facing towards the back. And then you want to click pressure cook,
and we want it on high pressure. Now we only want it on high pressure for a minute, so set it there. Okay, and that's it. It'll beep when it starts. And just make sure that you put a dishcloth over this at the back, because sometimes it can release some steam, and it's helpful if the dishcloth catches that because you don't want the cabinets getting any condensation. So yeah, we'll just leave it and come back to check on it once it's done pressure cooking. So when using an Instant Pot after it's done cooking at the high pressure, it automatically goes to the low pressure and the keep warm setting. So you can leave this on for as long as you would like to check if you can open it up and see what's inside. You need to check how the pressure release is going. So to do that, this knob, which was pointing towards sealing, you can turn it towards venting. And if no steam is released, then you are good to open your Instant Pot. So you can click cancel, and then open it up. Okay, so we've opened up the lid and given it a stir, and this is the pumpkin quinoa. So basically it looks like that. It's a bit of a softer consistency. To eat this, you can eat it on its own, you can add other vegetables to it, you could put it inside peppers to make stuffed peppers, however you would like to. As always, feel free to make any modifications with the recipe, any modifications with the spices or seasonings that have been added, and hope you enjoy.
That's amazing. I love that stuff. Look at technology. Of course, look at the chef.
So now
So what are the things that during our weight loss club, some of the participants brought up some issues about noodles, and I love noodle soup and things of that nature. So this is something that they did for me. So thanks, Steffi, for coordinating this. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All love noodles. I know noodles are super popular. There's so many noodles places around campus. But one concern that I have is when you're going to restaurants to get noodles, there's so much sodium. And I've noticed nowadays, because I cook a lot at home, that I can really taste the added salt in different things that I buy from outside. So we've compiled 3 different types of noodles that are known to be healthy, and we're going to be telling you about them. So we're going to start off with miso. Miso is a fermented condiment that is especially popular in parts of Asia, though it has made its way to the Western world. It's incredibly nutritious and linked to a variety of health benefits, including better digestion and a stronger immune system. The varieties are made from soybeans, and they're considered to be a complete source of protein because they contain all of the essential amino acids needed for the human body. Miso fermentation helps improve the body's ability to digest and absorb foods, and the condiment also contains probiotics that can promote gut health and digestion. And it's also rich in nutrients such as vitamin K, copper, zinc, B vitamins, calcium, iron, magnesium, selenium, and phosphorus. But it can be salty, so be mindful of that when you're purchasing it at the grocery store. So now we're going to be showing you a very short video that shows you how to make dashi. And miso soup is a traditional Japanese soup that's made primarily of the paste that we talked about. And the dashi is the broth and additional ingredients such as vegetables, seaweed, and tofu. So please watch this video to see how to make the broth.
Hi guys, Nami here. Welcome to Just One Cookbook channel. Today I'm going to show you 3 ways to make dashi. Let's get started. Method 1. Dashi packet. In a medium saucepan, add 2 to 3 cups water and start cooking over medium heat. If you want rich flavor dashi, use 2 cups water and simmer for 5 minutes. Take out and discard the dashi packet. It's now ready for use. Method 2. Dashi powder. Dashi powder is the easiest way to make dashi. In a medium saucepan, boil 2 to 3 cups of water. Once boiling, simply add 1 packet of dashi powder. Stir well and let the powder dissolve completely. Wasn't that easy? Method 3. Homemade dashi. First, gently clean the kombu with a damp cloth without removing powdery umami substances. And remember, don't wash kombu with water. Now soak kombu in 4 cups of water for 30 minutes or up to overnight. This is what we call kombu dashi. Transfer the kombu dashi to a large pot. Slowly bring to boil over medium-low heat. Just before boiling, when you see little bubbles appear around the edges of the pot, remove the kombu. If you leave it in the water, dashi will become slimy and bitter. Add 3 cups of bonito flakes and let it simmer for 30 seconds to 1 minute. Turn off the heat and let bonito flakes steep in dashi for 10 minutes. Strain dashi and it's ready for use. You can keep dashi for 3 to 7 days in the fridge and up to 3 weeks in the freezer. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel and give me thumbs up. And see you guys next time for another delicious recipe. Bye!
So as you can see, it's super simple to make the soup broth, and we're just going to be giving you a 15-minute miso soup recipe. So you start off by heating your soup broth on the pan, and you could use any of those 3 methods of preparation. And then you want to add your chard, which are leafy veggies, green onion, seaweed, and tofu in the broth, and you cook that briefly. And after that's done, you want to turn the heat off and whisk the miso paste that you can purchase from the store until it's smooth and liquidy, and then you add it to the broth. And that's it. That's how you make miso soup.
So next I'll be talking about shirataki noodles, which are also referred to as miracle noodles, and they're made from the Japanese konjac yam, also known as the devil's tongue or elephant yam, and they are translucent gelatinous noodles consisting almost entirely of water and glucomannan fiber, and they're practically calorie and carb free. So they soak up whatever flavors you cook them up with, and they make an excellent base for a variety of keto pasta dishes. So traditional shirataki noodles are made entirely from water and fiber from the yam, and these fibers in the noodle can help boost your digestion and curb hunger. And these fibers also can support weight management and boost your cardiovascular health by improving cholesterol and blood sugar levels. And because these noodles contain only fiber and water, they are essentially calorie-free, making them an excellent choice for most weight management diets, not just keto. And depending on the brand, the nutrition labels list between 10 to 20 calories per 100 gram serving, so that's roughly around 3 to 4 ounces. And it's important to note that these shirataki noodles are pretty much nutrient-free as well, since they're about 97% water. So without any of the micronutrients found naturally in these noodles, it's important to make sure that you supplement your dish with a lot of healthy fats, quality meats, and plenty of veggies.
Yeah, so in the same vein, I was trying to look for some alternatives to shirataki noodles, and I came across this interesting guy, and it's called kelp noodles. So kelp noodles are actually semi-transparent noodles made from the jelly-like extract from edible kelp, which is basically brown seaweed. So they can be made without the addition of grain flour or starch, and kelp noodles have a crunchy texture and are pretty low in calories. They can be eaten raw, but for added taste, some prefer to cook them in water with spices added for flavoring. And according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in a half cup serving weighing 110 grams, a cup noodles usually contain around 6 calories, no proteins, fat, cholesterol, or sugars. They're also gluten-free. In terms of macronutrients, they have 1 gram of carbs, followed by 1 gram of fiber, which basically makes it keto-friendly, as well as 35 milligrams of sodium, which comes from the natural sodium chemical found in seaweed, so it's no added sodium if you're to make this by hand. And they're also rich in nutrients and minerals. So I'm just going to list them right off here. So it contains 336 milligrams of vitamin K, 334 milligrams of calcium, which is roughly 15% of your daily calcium needs, and 5.6 milligrams of iron, which is roughly 4% of your daily iron needs, achieved by a serving of kelp noodles. So to make kelp noodles at home, all you need to do is just purchase dry or raw kelp, grind it into a flour or paste, and then mix with fresh water and added salt to your liking. The gummy compounds found in the kelp actually help the noodles achieve their springy texture, and it usually takes one cup of fresh kelp to make half a cup serving of kelp noodles. And once you made the kelp noodles, they're not just limited to noodle dishes themselves alone. You can also add them into salads for an extra crunch. Next slide, please. Right. So in this section, we have covered over some tips for holiday eating, some different noodles, and now we just wanted to finish off by talking a little bit about portioning, beliefs, and general tips to follow. Next slide. So here is a picture of a food scale. This is actually Dr. Kearney's wife's food scale. So we really recommend everyone have a food scale because we always talk about eating in a caloric deficit as being the number one priority if you do want to lose weight. And while some people may intuitively count it or qualitatively try to count their calories, most of the time people like to underestimate how much they are actually eating. So while you think you may be eating less, you're actually eating at maintenance calories, or you may be even eating in excess calories, which is why you may not see any progress in terms of weight reduction. So if you do purchase a food scale, you can use it to really track calories. So in the back of a lot of foods, they do have nutritional values. And if we take a look back at like the kelp example, they say 110 grams of kelp noodles roughly has 6 calories. So if you were to weigh this on your food scale, you can accurately track your calories and hopefully be in a caloric deficit at the end of each day. Next slide. So this is just a slide about portioning. So a portion is essentially how much food you choose to eat at one time, whether it be in a restaurant or in a package or even in your own kitchen during the holiday season. And the good thing about portions is that they're 100% under your control. You just got to have a way of measuring them. So many foods that actually come as a single portion actually contain multiple servings, and you can usually find what's the recommended serving size on a product's nutrition facts label, which is found in every product that you will buy at the supermarket. So in this slide, we just wanted to give you like a handy way to estimate portion sizes in case if you didn't have a food scale. So for example, let's just say you're at a friend's house or a relative's house for a Christmas dinner, and you obviously don't want to bring your food scale there, right? But one way you can roughly estimate is by taking, for example, your fist. A closed fist is roughly the size of a cup serving. For me, my family doesn't have a food scale, but at the same time, we eat a lot of rice. So I like to use that fist as kind of this rule of thumb in order to make sure that I'm not eating as much carbs as I should be. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of a slide on portion sizes. These are the guidelines by the Canada's Food Guide. They recommend half a plate of vegetables, quarter plate protein, quarter plate complex carbohydrates. And this obviously depends on the size of the plate. Usually, a question you like to ask, we encourage you to ask yourself is your plate bigger or smaller than your stomach? Because that's roughly a good indication of how much you should be eating. So, for example, going back to the holidays, even though grandma's mashed potatoes are absolutely insane out of this world, you shouldn't really be stocking half your plate up with mashed potatoes, but you should be kind of aiming to keep them to only a quarter of the plate. Next slide, please. And finally, we just compiled some general tips for portion control. So the first point, like I mentioned in the previous slide, use smaller dinnerware. Large plates can actually make food appear smaller, prompting you to eat more, whereas on the contrary, if you use a smaller plate and you pack it with what seems like a lot of food, it may not actually be if you were to use a large plate. So a lot of it maybe comes down to kind of this mental thing, something to do with your psychology. And if you think you're eating a lot, you probably won't eat as much as before. If you're going to be eating out, this might not be applicable too much into in the COVID scenario, but when you're eating out, do ask for half a portion when eating out, or maybe finish half the portion and take the other half in a to-go box for other meals throughout the week. A couple studies actually found that restaurant portions usually range from 2 to 3 more times what is recommended of a standard portion. So that's just something to be mindful about. The third point is all about eating slowly. Usually in holidays, the food's laid out all there for people to kind of peruse and munch on, usually like a buffet style. So people usually get multiple plates within a very short time frame. And studies have actually found that the brain takes roughly 20 minutes to register fullness. So in the holidays, maybe get one plate and take your time with it, right? Have a conversation with grandma or grandpa beside. I'll laugh a bit, right? Don't feel the need to eat all the food at one sitting, because it's definitely not a sprint, it's a marathon. And finally, don't eat snacks from the container. If you're going to be munching on a bunch of shortbread cookies that are kind of masked in the container, you're just going to constantly be reaching down in the bag, not noticing how much you're eating before it's all gone. If you actually make the effort to take the cookies out of the container, put them on your plate and see, okay, now I'm eating 4 cookies, which is approximately this amount of calories, you're going to be more mindful of how much you're actually consuming.
And kind of along that same vein, now we're going to be talking about why people overeat. So the holiday seasons are that time of year when people, myself included, are often tempted to overeat. So we're going to be taking a closer look at overeating and how we can be a little bit healthier about our eating habits. Overeating has been proven to be linked to an increased risk of obesity, which can then cause multiple health problems, including risk of heart disease, stroke, and some cancers. But what actually causes people to overeat? So overeating is often triggered by a situation. So for example, social eating, that would be everyday eating with friends, family, or on holidays, as Alan kind of spoke about. Another one is emotional eating. I know I'm guilty of this, so comfort eating or stress snacking. And another one is impulse eating. So when you're exposed to a cue that makes you want to eat. So for example, you walk past a bakery, see some muffins, then you just gotta grab one. Or you see a food ad and it really makes you hungry for those chips. Next slide, please. So, but really, how does the way that we think impact how we eat? People sometimes don't realize this, but the way that we think can have a huge impact on how we eat. And for people who have trouble with overeating, trying to change their habits can be a much bigger mental hurdle than a physical one. Neurobiology research has actually shown that the brain can be rewarded by food in pretty much the same way that it can be rewarded by drugs. And people who are particularly sensitive to reward food were more likely to be overweight in this study. So this actually means that people can sometimes feel happy or rewarded from overeating, even if they rationally know that that is not good for them. And that's also the reason behind comfort food. So to stop the overeating cycle, it's really important to be able to combat that mental hurdle. So one step towards doing this is taking a positive attitude towards your new eating habits and trying to implement them as a permanent part of your diet. And this includes trying to, enjoy food and eat food in a healthy way rather than feeling deprived or upset by your new habits or diet. And it's also important to focus on successes along the way rather than fixating on a goal on the scale. Next slide, please. So here are some tips for how to put all that into action. So firstly, start paying attention to what foods are your favorite, the ones that you will automatically reach for. And when you eat these, try and pay close attention to why you like them and the specifics of the taste. Sometimes we actually don't pay much attention to this, but by starting to do that, we can realize how unhealthy and unappealing some of our favorite or comfort foods are. This is one of the first steps to changing your habits. And when you're doing this, you can also start paying attention to your eating pattern. You can ask yourself questions like, when does the overeating happen and why does it happen? Another tip is to keep healthy food and snacks in stock at your house so that you can easily grab them. And along these same lines, make a plan for what to eat when you're on the run or when the business of life interrupts your shopping schedule. Not having a plan can often lead to eating junk food because it's just easy and it's right there. And next, don't skip meals. This might seem a bit counterintuitive for combating overeating, but regular meals can actually be very good for controlling what you eat, and skipping meals can lead to overeating later on. And earlier we mentioned keeping healthy foods easily available, and that kind of goes hand in hand with this next tip, which is don't leave junk food or candies around the house. Leaving these easily accessible can lead to being tempted to eat them. And lastly, another tip for when the pandemic is over, choose what to order from restaurants before you go out. So a lot of restaurants these days have their full menus listed online, and making a decision beforehand will help you make a healthier choice than when you're sitting in the restaurant hungry and being tempted by all the possibilities of unhealthy choices.
So now we're going to end off with a comparison of actually Dr. Cornu's wife, Sarah Cornu's pizza recipe relative to Pizza and their instant slices. So now if you look at the difference between the homemade pizza versus the local slice of pizza, it's about a third of the calories with much lower total fat, 1/5, zero trans fat, a seventh of the cholesterol, and less than 10% of the sodium that's used in that single slice of pizza. According to the American Heart Association, if you're living with congestive heart failure, you should limit the amount of sodium you consume daily to about 1,500 milligrams a day. And as you can see in the single slice of pizza, I was extremely surprised that it had 1680 milligrams of sodium in that one slice. And I know that, like, for example, my dad, like, he'll buy 2 of these, and that's like double the amount of sodium that he should be eating in a single day. So it's really important to keep in mind that even if you have these foods that they're your guilty pleasure or things that you really crave, you can make them at home and make them much healthier. And I think that's something to keep in mind. So if you're wondering about the ingredients in Sari Cornu's recipe, they used sauteed spinach, broccoli, peppers, onion, balsamic vinegar, a touch of olive oil powder, garlic powder, and the pizza dough was made by her sister. So, but it's if possible, it's best to get whole wheat. So these are our references, and we just want to thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope that you really enjoyed everything we shared with you and you were inspired to eat healthier and to really pay attention to what you're consuming during the holidays. Eating healthy does not have to be boring. It can be lots of fun, and the foods that you consume can be delicious, and not only that, but they can improve your health and make you live a better and longer life.
Well, I want to thank Steffi and her entire team. I'm hungry. I know my wife is actually going to make some of that pizza tonight. She asked me what I want for dinner. I said that would be great. Of course, before dinner, I have to go for a walk and do a couple more things around the office here. So I guess one of the things is life is about making choice and being around friends and family, and making choices. So to me is that for many years is that when we go out is that we go to Harvey's, for instance, and I'll have the veggie burger on whole wheat and put as many vegetables as they can fit till they fall off. Don't eat the French fries, but just steal 1 or 2 from my daughter or somebody else's plate. And you know, we appreciate trying to be healthy. I know how difficult it is. I still have a sweet tooth, and today someone brought me over some bean soup today. We have a pressure cooker. We don't use it as much as I can, and I thank Aditi for showing us how to do that. And so that's great, and we'll go back to that. And you have just so many different pearls in this, you know. Like so, I microwave quite a bit, and so I feel good about keeping the vitamin content better. I'd use very little in the way of water, so that's good. I know Chad's there, who's quite a good cook. He doesn't like the microwave, so but other people have different ways of looking at this. So I learned so much today. First of all, is I want to wish everybody a very festive time. Enjoy family, friends. Be safe. Keep your bubble. I think this time next year we'll have a true holiday special. And one of the things is that I learned the power of good, healthy, good food with exercise and eating right. But don't be afraid to use proper pharmaceutical agents when necessary. I have to give the pharmaceutical industry great credit. They changed the world. They're going to give us a chance to get back to normal by developing vaccines. So I'm truly amazed that 15 years of work has been done in 1 year. And I'm going to line up for any vaccine that Health Canada tells I should take. I wish you all a safe and happy holiday season. Is there was any comments out there? I'll see if Chad's really quite a chef there, so I wonder if Chad wants to say something or not before he has to go, if he can give any pros about some healthy ideas there. So Chad makes a wonderful pizza. My wife makes a wonderful pizza. I think you guys should have a cooking contest, and I'll be the judge. But by the way, Chad, my wife wins no matter what.
Yeah, no, I can't compete against Carrie, so don't ask me to do that. But anyhow, it was an amazing presentation, amazing recipes. So it was great. Thank you.
So for anybody in the chat section have any ideas, or anybody else want to say anything? I wouldn't mind just all the speakers just saying what they're going to do for the holiday, and how they're going to modify their eating habits a little bit. So one thing I'm going to do definitely, so I can eat more, I'm going to exercise more, and try to make good choices, and try to limit my sweet tooth as much as I can, much vegetables as I can, um, but like all of us, it's tempting to overeat. So I'll be mindful of that. I'm going to weigh myself every day as well.
Yeah, Dr. Kearney, just like you, I have quite the sweet tooth. So for me, it's all about cutting down on those candies and desserts. My parents both have quite the sweet tooth as well, so they've got stashes of chocolates all over the place. So my tactic, I've come home for the holidays, has been to have everybody hide their little stash of candy so that I can't find it and be tempted.
One funny thing is someone brought some chocolate chip cookies over, and they're really good. And Carrie said, "Bring them to the office." The problem is, if I take them to the office, I'll eat them along the way. So I said, "Just put them in the kids' rooms upstairs." And I snuck up yesterday to have one, so I should have to rehide them again. What about Helena? What are you going to do for holidays? How are you going to keep yourself in shape?
So because of online schooling and I'm home, I've been eating not so great. So recently I decided that I don't want my body to deteriorate and kind of die over quarantine. So I made sure to include at least 1 or 2 veggies on my plate all the time. And I've been actually using these like smoothie. They sell it at like Safeway or like your local superstore, like these smoothie packs where you can pop like 1 cube of a smoothie, like, and then put it in with like water and like mix it up and drink that as like your, I guess, like supplement, like drink on top of your meal. So I've been having those at night whenever I get hungry or like I'm craving a snack. So yeah, that's what I'm planning to keep doing for the holidays and things like that.
Remember to have 2 glasses of water if you can. What anybody else there? What any other ideas from anybody? Steffi, what are you going to do?
I think I'm gonna go with the theme of making our favorite dishes at home much healthier. I think now I started cooking with pretty much no salt. I never use salt. I just use spices if I want flavor, like pepper. To the point where if I order something from outside, I'm like, this is too salty. I can't eat it. So I'm just gonna keep experimenting with different recipes. I really love burritos, so I'm gonna look for ways to make those healthier. I know they're not the best because they add so much stuff to it when you order from a restaurant, but I've tried some at home and it's been really good. So yeah, keep going with that.
Alan, what are you going to do?
Yeah, so for me the holiday season is less so about the food and more so about the liquid. So I love my hot chocolate, I love my eggnog, I love my lattes from like Starbucks, whatever. So it's just about that. So my plans are just try to drink as much water as I possibly can. So usually I'm sticking to the 8 cup recommendation, but now I'm trying to ramp it up to even 9 to 10 cups a day, so that I'm drinking less so of those sweetened beverages. And like you said, yeah, just having the 2 cups before every meal really helps lower the appetite and make you eat less.
And Aditi, what are you going to be doing?
I think I'm also gonna try to work on making recipes healthier. I'm a big baker, so that's what I love to do when I come home. So I'm gonna try and find some ways to make some of like my baked recipes a little bit healthier. And I thought some of the suggestions that Jesslyn had put together for this presentation were fantastic. So I'm looking forward to trying some of those.
I'm also looking forward to some of those noodles, those magic noodles and different things, and putting lots of vegetables and extra broths in there. So sometimes when you go out for these photos or these soups, these noodles, you're right, they're quite rich in salt. But what I tend to do is that we got some put extra water into them. I put extra vegetables in them. I just take some broccoli, put some spinach in it, and of course, there's some low salt broths is added to these sorts of things. So lots of different things to take something and make them a little bit healthier. Did I forget anybody? Any comments there? I know Stuart's audio is not working well today, so I think we got all our points there. Any other suggestions by anybody out there? Anybody else want to give any ideas? Well, sounds like we've got some great ideas, some great cooking, and I want to thank Steffi and the rest of the team here for putting us all together. Again, once again, just happy holidays, everybody. One of the things I'm very grateful that we came through this year. We're all stronger now. We learned a lot. We had to make some changes, but even some healthier changes too as well. So I think we'll end here and just wishing everybody again the best of the holiday season. Be healthy. Keep track of your calories, and as my wife says, is that she has that she measures, and for some of us, measuring is quite good. Eyeballing is eyeballing it. So think about how to improve your health and to be healthier. So good holidays, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Of course, I thank Stuart and the rest of the team for putting all this together. Take care, everybody.